What's happening, everybody? On today's show, our buddy Chris Marler. Say hi, Marler, of the Saturday Football Uncensored podcast, joins us to talk all things ahead of SEC Week 3. What happened with Bama and A&M last weekend? And seriously, is the SEC overrated? Locked On SEC starts right now.
You are Locked On SEC, your daily podcast on the Southeastern Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And what's up, everybody? Welcome into Locked On SEC. I'm Chris Gordy. Thanks for making us your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. All right, we got to jump right into it, Marler. You were there, scene of the crime. I was there in person when I saw LSU lose to Florida State a week ago. Mm-hmm. You were there in person for the Alabama loss to Texas. Before we get into how the game played out, take us into the environment, because everybody I talked to said it was just the whole environment leading up to the game was just awesome.
Okay.
Really?
So I'll take you through my weekend. It was like we got there on Friday. We went to Innisfree. We hung out with a bunch of people from Bama Twitter. Had a really good time. You know, I had a blast. That part was fun. Packed out. A lot of Texas fans, a lot of Bama fans, all that kind of stuff. Next day, didn't go to game day. I've seen game day 1,000 times. It was going to be hot. I'd rather go see like more friends and do all that kind of stuff. The tailgating scene I heard on the quad was awesome. I was at a house tailgating about like a 5-minute walk from the stadium, and I enjoyed that. We had a really good time. Going into the stadium, there was like a decent buzz going into it, but I was shocked to get in there and see the stadium not full. I didn't. That was odd to me. And then I was hearing like people say like, yeah, we bought these tickets for $300 like a couple weeks ago. They were going for $80 today, like on StubHub and stuff like that. So I think that like obviously people were pumped to watch it. It did like over 10 million viewers on TV and stuff like that. But I thought from like a crowd standpoint, it felt like, and maybe I'm wrong. It felt like they were really only a factor and loud in like the very beginning of the game. And then after that first interception, there was a lull. And then like for 8 minutes in the third quarter, like it didn't seem like they were, everyone seemed shocked more than anything.
I've said this about, and we've seen it across a lot of SEC stadiums throughout the years. Mm-hmm. One, we've had the problem that Saban always calls up Bama fans on when you're playing the non-conference teams.
Yeah.
And everybody leaves at halftime. Look, sorry, we don't want to watch you beat up on Mercer for,
right.
a half. But the other one is, I think as the prices go up, and up, you price out a lot of the blue-collar fans that are going to go and scream their heads off, and it becomes a country club sport. Like the elites can afford the $1,000 tickets, but as a result, they're not good. They're going to show up a little late because, we were at the tailgate, we were drinking. And then when they get there, they're just kind of stand around and, hey, go get me another beer. It's like they're not cheering and all that. So I don't know. There's a little element to that, but I wonder if this being such a big game so early in the season, did maybe people burn out early? Were people tailgating and got too hammered, or
maybe? I mean, and again, like I heard nothing but great things from the tailgate, from the actual tailgates, from what I saw inside. And like, I just think anytime you don't sell out a stadium, I mean, it's Bama, Texas. How do you not sell that out? How is the stadium not full at kickoff? And I said something about that on Twitter, and I got some pushback, like anything I say apparently. And I was just a little bit disappointed in it, and I thought the stadium could have been louder at times. There were just things I've seen in other SEC stadiums. It wasn't Sanford, it wasn't Death Valley, it wasn't Jordan. I went to Jordan Hare last year for a game against 2, I think 3 and 5 teams at the time, between them and A&M, and that was a much more electric atmosphere, it felt like. But that being said, like that's not why they lost the game. And we talked about this off air. It's like everything that I thought was going. I wasn't shocked by hardly anything that happened on Saturday. Like, and you look at the box score, especially, it kind of played out exactly how I thought it was going to play out. And I know that's not like that may sound crazy, but if you look at everything I said beforehand, I said Texas was going to get the ball and score first. I didn't see how this game didn't start out with Bama down 14-3. They were down 13-3, and then I thought they would have enough to claw their way back in it. They took a lead in the fourth quarter, but ultimately they would lose by 10 plus points. And that's what they did. And I think the stuff that you'd be concerned with is, Texas had dudes. Like, Texas is a really good team, and you need to give them credit, because it's like all I've seen from this is, for the most part, is everyone saying how this is why the dynasty's dead, and that this went wrong, and this went wrong, and they didn't do this well, and this is like showing why, I don't know, like all these different reasons why Bama sucks after this game. But Texas is a very, very good football team with let's not forget, now he's on the Heisman watch finally. But you're talking about the number 1 ranked high school quarterback recruit in the history of recruiting services. And he's got dudes everywhere. And you saw them on display all day on Saturday night. The problem for me for Bama is, like, the offensive line, Quinn Ewers, his jersey was the same exact color when he walked off the field as he walked on it. And then you didn't get any pressure on their quarterback, for one. Gave up 5 sacks. You should never have 5 sacks on a quarterback like Jalen Milroe. But the other thing is, you took a lead in the fourth quarter. And what you're not used to seeing from Saban teams is, you take a lead in the fourth quarter. Not only did you lose, you gave up 21 points, the most ever in a fourth quarter under Nick Saban. And then in the way it happened, after you took the lead, it wasn't like you had the lead and blew it late. You let Texas go right down the field, 3 plays, 75 yards to score. Then your first offensive possession, you throw a pick, and then their first possession or first play of their possession, they score. Yeah. So you took a lead, and then in 5 plays, you're down 11.
That I thought was the turning point of the game, because even when Bama takes the lead and Texas answers and they take the lead back,
right?
What I saw from when they get the interception, what we've seen so often from teams that visiting teams, Bryant-Denny Stadium or wherever playing Alabama, is you go, oh, thank God, okay, we've got the lead. Now let's run the ball, let's milk this clock, and let's try to get out of here with the win. And that's where they always fail, because Bama D steps up, gets a stop, gets the ball back, you're done. What Texas did was, no, Sark said, keep the foot on the gas pedal. We're throwing it still and going deep. And then they go up double digits, and it was like, oh God, okay, they might win this game. Yeah. But that to me was the turning point we've seen so often with Alabama. I said, like, something special was going to happen. Sark called a hell of a game and put the pedal to the metal and said, we're not afraid of Tuscaloosa. We're not afraid of Bama. And if we're going to win this game, it's got to be with big explosive plays.
Well, and here's the thing. I think one thing that people have figured out when you beat Bama, and it started out as a cliche, but it's very, very real. And it's kind of like playing like craps or like roulette or something. I mean, not roulette, but like once you start winning a little bit, you have the option to keep pushing your luck, right? Or like maybe blackjack, just gambling in general, or cashing out. Like, and what I mean by that is, people always say, like, you're not going to beat Bama by kicking field goals, right? That hasn't happened since 2011, that one game in Bryant-Denny. But you're not going to beat them by kicking field goals. And one thing that teams have started doing, and I don't know if Bama's adjusted as well to it as possible, because in the past, I think you had this thing where it'd be like, all right, you have this big, mighty defense, Nick Saban defense, and you knew Bama was going to be able to run the football and impose their will. So if you were 4th and 2 from the Bama 45 or midfield, you're going to punt them deep, right? Make them travel the whole length of the field and stuff like that, and take your chances that way. I think now what you're seeing is people that are going into these games, and you see it with Kiffin all the time, you saw it with Sark. You have to defend these teams, especially these good offenses that have so many different weapons and great play callers. You have to defend them for all 4 downs, and you have to, like, it felt like several times on Saturday, and this is a coaching thing, where Bama got a stop. And like, oh, thank God. They're gonna have to punt. It's 4th and 1, 4th and 2, and then you see the offense stay on the field, and it looked like they already had a play that they were ready to call, and Bama's running people out there, not really sure what to do.
You know what? The craziest stat, I couldn't believe it. I double and triple checked it after the game, but Alabama did not, like, when's the last time you can remember a game Alabama did not record an interception or a sack in a game?
Probably last year.
Well, so here's the funny thing. I was going back thinking, oh God, this must have been like 10 years since they've done it. It was the Utah State game last year, the opener, which ironically they won like 55-0. But that just feels like a rarity. Every other game last year, Bama either had a pick or a sack, because it's the same defenses do.
If you look at it too, and this is one of the things I was so happy to see in game 1 against even though it was Middle Tennessee State, was they were +2 in the turnover margin. They didn't do that in a single regular season game a year ago, finished +2. You think about Bama's defense in the past, like +2 is nothing. I mean, it's nothing. And they finished 8 of 11 regular season games versus FBS opponents last year without an interception. And so but if you sit there and look at, like, if you're going to air it out that much, you would assume at some point they are going to come away with the football, and you would assume at some point they were going to get a pass rush. And it wasn't even the fact they didn't get to the quarterback. They weren't even close, man. And I kept saying this too. The most impressive part of this, and we could break it down from every angle about why Bama looked bad. And I feel like we've all done that. But the stuff that Sark was doing on offense was so impressive. And like the ratio, I said this the other day on Twitter too, the ratio of how the distance of how open his receivers were getting per second each time Ewers dropped back was incredible to watch all night. And I mean all over the field. Like the play design was incredible to watch all night. Made you cover the entire 53 and a half and the entire, it seemed like 100 yards. It was just, it was really impressive. But the other thing is this too, Gordy, is like, I'll say this, and like, I know this is going to come off as like being a homer. So let me preface it by saying, I also said they'd lose by 10 plus points since June. And I was pretty spot on about it. Like, so you look at the rest of the schedule, and I understand the whole sky is falling thing. This is the earliest they've lost to an FBS team. I'm sorry, like earliest they've lost in a season under Saban in like 15 years. And they haven't had their backs against the wall this early like this before. But like, there's no one else on that schedule that you look at and it's like, that's a loss. That is an outright loss.
Well, we just don't know really what any of the other teams are yet.
Or Bama.
Yeah, and we'll get into it next segment. Look, LSU looks like crap one week, they look great the next. We've seen this across the entire SEC so far. So maybe this weekend we get into conference play a little bit. We'll start to see what some people have. But he is Chris Marler, of course, the Saturday Football Uncensored podcast. We'll start to get into week 3 here in just a little bit. Stay with us. First, I want to remind you guys that this episode is presented to you by our friends over at eBay Motors. Look, passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors, they got everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, from superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED light headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with the eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebay.com/motors. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. And we're continuing on here on Locked On SEC, and our buddy Chris Marler, of course, from the Saturday Football Uncensored podcast. Marler, before we turn the page and get into week 3, just a quick thought on what you saw from A&M in Miami, because for the first time in a while, offense wasn't the problem for A&M. They scored 33 points, but what happened to DJ Durkin in that defense? Goodness gracious.
Yeah, that's tough, man. I don't know, because like, you would think that 33 points would have been enough for them. They were able to do stuff early on in that game that was impressive. And then it seemed like every time they would pull ahead at all, it was immediate that they were behind. I mean, again, credit to Miami, but like that is, I said this is the lock of the week that A&M was going to win, like outright the money line, and shows what I know. But they were like, the defense, I think, will be fine. They've got too many talented guys in the defense to not be. And maybe you make it, you make the case that this meant so much more to Miami or whatever, and Cristobal and all that kind of stuff. We've seen Cristobal in big games, and he's fallen flat on his face way more times than not. This was shocking that they pulled away by that much late in the game. I admittedly didn't get to see the very end of it because I was going into the stadium. So maybe a bunch of stuff happened that I don't know, and it was a crazy ending that looked worse than it was. But I mean, they were down at half. They were from 17-7 when things looked good. Everything went downhill tremendously after that.
Yeah, and A&M did score again. It just, Connor Wegman threw the first 2 interceptions of his career. Mm-hmm. Now, the second one came in late in the game and didn't really matter. But, it just was – it's what I said last week, too. I mean, now it's the talk starts to come up again. What's Jimbo's buyout? Is he going to turn this thing around? is 7 wins. Does 7 wins keep him safe? Is 8 wins what he has to do? It's just this. It's this tough battle of where does he need to get? And big picture, Marler. I know I asked you last week, is the SEC overrated? I'll ask you again. Where are we with the SEC? Because I go back and forth. Look, you mentioned it. Alabama lost to a really good Texas team. LSU lost to a really good Florida State team. I mean, there's no shame. Like, okay, if Alabama wins that game, are we feeling like they're going to go undefeated, but suddenly they lose one game and now it's, now multiple losses are going to come? Like, it feels like there's no in between here.
Yeah, completely agree. And I think that the Bama stuff, I've struggled with this because I genuinely think that they're going to be okay. It's week 2. It's week 2. Like, we don't know. Like, all these teams are going to look very different at the end of the season versus the beginning, right? I think the idea that I'm seeing people saying like Mississippi State and Arkansas are going to be teams that could beat Bama. No, like just no, like absolutely not. It's comical to think that, in my opinion. But the other stuff, I mean, like I do think that one thing that'll be interesting to watch, because the SEC has got the benefit of the doubt for a really long time. And you look up right now and you see the Pac-12 has 8 ranked teams. Now, if you go into conference play, like usually you see with the SEC, where it's like, oh man, they cannibalize themselves, and there's so many, they lose all these games because they're playing all these tough opponents in the SEC. But you don't have the option or the ability now to go into the season where you're going to start playing each other and be like, well, that team was already 4-0 and they're a bowl team, whatever, and you've been embarrassed on a national stage. And I don't have the numbers in front of me of the games that we've seen like in years past. I know that Georgia played Oregon last year. LSU played Florida State. So there were some big marquee games. But like, it's not just it's not that they got beat, it's how they lost. And in the games that you did win, like the most impressive one is what? Ole Miss beating the backup quarterback against Tulane.
Yeah, if Michael Pratt plays in that game, I feel like Tulane might win that game over Ole Miss.
Yeah, they were ahead I think they were ahead going into the 4th. They were ahead in the 4th at some point. It was at least close. So yeah, I think that the SEC has a 15, 20-year resume that will give them the benefit of the doubt with a lot of people. I work for a company that we cover SEC football specifically. I'm not in that boat. I think they're the 3rd best conference in the country right now. I think that's
behind who?
Behind the Pac-12 and the Big Ten.
Okay, but who's the Pac-12 beaten?
Everyone. They started out like 18-0.
Yeah, but like, what's their most impressive win?
Probably Oregon going on the road and beating Texas Tech. I mean, or maybe
Tech?
Washington.
Okay,
that was an upset for a lot of people. I didn't understand that. Dude, listen, if you're watching the Pac-12 with 8 ranked teams compared to the SEC with 5, objectively speaking,
I get it. But like,
what is the SEC's most impressive win?
Somebody was trying to sell me. Well, no, that's the point. Is Nick? Nobody has impressive wins other than Texas and Florida State. Like
against the SEC.
Like somebody was trying to sell me on Utah's win over Florida. I'm like, Florida's supposed to win 6 games this year. Stop. Like,
right. But I think that you look at that and like that game should not affect, I think, with people's like national optics of the SEC, but it will, right? Because I think once you get to the end of the season, like the Big Ten, I think, is pretty soft. But I think the whole idea that the SEC West is the best conference or division in college football, it's not true this year. It's just not. The Big Ten East is a better division, and that's not taking anything away from the teams that are in the SEC West. And they could be a lot of solid teams. Maybe they all go 6-6 at least and make a bowl game. I don't know. But when you look at the Big Ten, especially in the East, like I see Michigan, Ohio State, and Penn State all in like the top 6.
Yeah, well, Michigan's had some real impressive wins over, I don't know, Alabama high school. Like, I can't overreact to any of this crap because we're 2 weeks in and a bunch of teams have played FCS schools. Like, it doesn't.
Right, I'm just saying, if you're asking me right now, and I had to say that decision, you look at what they put on the field. I get what you're saying. Like, the only 2 teams with impressive wins, Texas and Florida State, and you're right. But those impressive wins came by double digits against the SEC.
All right, Marler, before we get into week 3, I want to throw some SEC stats at you. We did this a year ago with you. 2 weeks into the SEC, I want to test your knowledge and see. Okay. Everything's so weird. They're 2 weeks into SEC play. Who leads the conference in passing?
My brain immediately went to Mississippi State, but it's I'm going to say Ole Miss.
No, so this is a kind of fluky thing. AJ Swan does because they played an extra game, but I'm going to take him out. It's Spencer Rattler at South Carolina. He leads the SEC in passing yards, followed by Jaden Daniels at LSU, Jackson Dart at Ole Miss, and Carson Beck. How about this? Joe Milton, Will Rogers, and KJ Jefferson are 10th, 11th, and 12th in the SEC.
That's pretty crazy. That's pretty crazy.
Would have never if you'd asked me a few weeks ago, I would have had those three guys in the top 5.
Easily.
Rushing leader, I already said it earlier, but it's Woody Marks at Mississippi State with 250 yards. Do you know the other 4 top leading rushers? 2 of them are from Tennessee, Jalen Wright and Jabari Small. Missouri's Cody Schrader and Ray Davis at Kentucky.
I'm so glad that you didn't let me answer that, because you said, do you know who they are? And I was like, yeah, sure, I'll take a shot at it. I would have never been close.
Quinshon Judkins, 12th in the SEC in rushing yards.
Yeah.
He's preseason All-American, Marler.
Right.
It must be unbelievable. Rocket Sanders, now he missed this week, but he's 28th in the league in rushing. He's going to miss another week this year. So, right now, Quinshon and Rocket will not even be, they're not even going to be the top 5 in SEC in rushing at year's end. So, that one was crazy. Jace McClellan, by the way, 19th. He was one that everybody was jumping on. So,
yeah.
Crazy. Receiving yards, Xavier Leggett at South Carolina, leading the conference in receiving yards.
That kind of makes sense.
The other one's Evan Stewart at A&M, Brian Thomas at LSU, Will Shepard at Vandy, and Ricky Pearsall at Florida. So no surprise with those guys. But how about the stat of the week, Marler? Brock Bowers caught 1 pass for 3 yards this week.
Here's something too, and I bring this up. I said it on our podcast, and I will say it again as many times as I can, because it's the most impressive stat in maybe the country to me, especially the SEC. There's no one in the country that does a better job of distributing the wealth, with the football, to their skill position players like Georgia. They had 11 different guys catch a pass in week 1, and they had 12 different guys catch a pass in week 2 against whoever they played against Ball State. 9 of those 12 had at least 2 catches, and Brock Bowers was last out of the 12 with only 3 receiving yards. That's a really good job of starting to do that entire thing that they were able to do in 2021, which is develop the depth of that position and develop depth of the pass catchers, especially so you get to the end of the year if anyone's injured, Bama, and you don't rely on all that.
I just find it fascinating. So Brock Bowers is 31st in the SEC in receiving yards right now. Didn't Desmond Howard pick him to win the Heisman? How's that?
Yeah, that was, and then people defended it it was he should win. He's the best player in college football. It's okay, all right, I'm not sure.
All right,
if your name is Kirby 6'9", 420, dogs on top, everything you're saying is null and void.
We got some games of the week we'll get to in a little bit, but I wanted to run through some of the junk games for this week. I'm putting Alabama, South Florida in there. It's weird they're going at South Florida. Alex Golish, obviously from Tennessee, he's the head coach there in Alabama, a 32-point favorite. Look, I think Bama will win. I don't know if they'll cover the 32. It's a lot of points. But let me ask you this perspective. How do you handle the quarterback spot, Marler? Do you say, Milroe, this is your whole game, go out there, once we get a comfortable lead, we'll pull you? Some people think maybe you pull Milroe a couple series, but get those other guys in there just to get a look at them.
I think that's what they'll do. I heard rumors when I was leaving Tuscaloosa that Buckner was going to start week 2, which I knew there was not a lot of truth to that, because it was listen, I don't think that Saban reacted that badly on Saturday night to Sunday morning. It's a drunk decision I would have made in college like that. It's you wake up I did what? No, I think that they'll play for sure. It'll be interesting to see who the third quarterback is. It's Ty Simpson. I do think Buckner gets some snaps and gets a look, because I think that Milroe is the best option, man. I do. And again, here's the one thing about football too that sucks is you're gonna have bad games, right? Think about how we talk about Stetson Bennett, right? And I'm gonna use this example because it's probably the best one to use. We talk about Stetson Bennett think about how we talk about Steven Garcia, right? And he it's kind of the inverse of each other. Steven Garcia goes off against Bama, and it's one of the most memorable games of all time, right? Stetson Bennett is he got blamed for all these things with terrible quarterback, and really you go look at the numbers. He was great for all of 2021, and then he plays that Bama team in Atlanta, and he throws 3 interceptions, and they lose by 17. Oh, what did he do in response to that? He came back and balled out the rest of the playoffs, and then all 15 games the next year. It's not baseball. It's not you go 0 for 4 one day and you get all these other games to even it out. It's a more glaring disappointment if you have a game in football. I think they're fine with Milroe.
Real quick, do they cover the 32?
I buy it to 31 and hammer it.
Okay. UL Monroe at A&M. A&M 36.5-point home favorites. Cover
I'm
that?
not betting against Louisiana Monroe as a Bama guy. Ever take Louisiana Monroe.
Samford plays at Auburn. There's no line on that game, but
Probably should be.
How ugly was that game against Cal? I mean, like it was funny because I was joking with our Locked On Auburn guy, Zach Blackerby. I said, well, at least they're, this Auburn coach is known for defense. No, he's known for offense. What the hell was that?
Let's talk about Zach Blackerby for a second because I love him to death. He's one of my favorite people in all of sports media. But his poll today, power ranking the SEC and having Auburn 5th, was hilariously bad. Like, no. We don't
know who is what yet. We don't know.
I know that Auburn team that had 230 yards total offense and 4 turnovers against Cal and had 2 drives over 5. Yeah, they got 0 losses.
0 losses.
Yeah, awesome. They had 5. I'm sorry, 12 of their 14 drives had 5 plays or less. They were awful all night.
Wow. All right, a few more real quick because we got to get the games that count. Vandy's at UNLV. Vandy 4-point road favorites. When's the last time Vandy was a road favorite?
Probably like an academic decathlon or something like that. I don't know. Then they were playing Frank the Tank in old school. I'm not touching that game. That is degenerate business right there.
It's at Allegiant Stadium too. That
is it? Oh my god! Why?
I mean, like, will they give out free tickets on the Strip? Like, hey,
there will be.
Come get a buffet and enjoy a football game.
I just would love to, like, my dream scenario for this is like there's like 11 people in the stands and like it's just the Vandy Whistler and like Chris Angel Mind Freak in the same row. Just like, who can be more annoying?
Georgia Tech is at Ole Miss. Sneaky one here for Ole Miss after they got pushed around the trenches by Tulane. They couldn't run the football, and now Georgia Tech. A program, they're 1-1, but like, I don't know, Ole Miss 19.5. That feels like one. You know what? I've talked myself into. I think Ole Miss is going to cover it.
So this game last year was like one of my locks of the. I think it was my lock of the week was in the score first. Covered 6.5 in the first quarter, and then like I think it was like only 14.5 or 13.5 in the first half, and they did all those things. Tech is a little bit better. And you also have Haynes King, who's familiar with Ole Miss and played in the SEC and all that good stuff. And they look pretty good for like part of the game against Louisville in their opening week game.
Probably should
have won it. But I think that like Ole Miss, the only thing I'm concerned about is like, all right, you have Bama the following week. What does it look like? What are you doing in terms of prep? Where like, are you sitting people early? Are you trying to run up a bunch of points like and get some confidence going into it? Because let's not forget too, there was a week I think, or a few years back, I think it was 2021. They were averaging like around 38 points in the first half alone of games. Like they were destroying people early and often in those games, and they obviously got shut out against Bama. I wonder how vanilla, if Lane can even do vanilla on offense. I wonder how vanilla the offense will be.
Yeah, and a bit they got to get their ground game back going because they got to go to Tuscaloosa next week, and they can't go in there with no run game at all.
No.
Last one, Akron is at Kentucky. Kentucky 26-point home favorite. Liam Cohen tweeted he will be back at that game. So he had a medical episode earlier this week. He says he's going to be back for that game. So I don't know. You like Kentucky minus the 26?
No, they've looked pretty bad so far.
Not great against Eastern Kentucky, yeah.
Yeah. So but I like them to win, obviously. And listen, these are all wins, like you said about Auburn. These are like Kentucky will be 3-0 going into the next week.
And then the next week is at Vandy. They'll be 4. So
yeah.
All right, we'll hit on the 5 biggest games in the SEC in just a second with our buddy Chris Marler. First, want to remind you guys, this episode is presented to you by one of our newest sponsors here. It is Jace Medical. And let me tell you a little bit about them and what they bring you. Jace Medical will give you the Jace case. What it is provides 5 life-saving antibiotics for emergency use. All it takes to get a Jace case is you fill out a simple online form, and in some cases, jump on a quick call with one of their board-certified physicians. You get ongoing care from their physicians on any treatment-related questions, doctor-created, doctor-recommended. Don't get caught unprepared. Everyone should be empowered to care for themselves and their loved ones during the unexpected, and Jace handles everything from online evaluation to licensed pharmacy medication delivery and ongoing consultation and care. They had a customer review from Frank who said it's easy as 1, 2, 3 and just in time. Received our package the same day. He got a sinus infection and his doctor was out of town. No appointments for days. Thank goodness it arrived. Look, storms, shortages, pandemics, reliance on China, and supply chain issues. We need to be prepared now more than ever. Jace Medical is simple. Like we said, go online, fill out that form. You get your prescription, life-saving medications right to your door. The Jace case will give you peace of mind so that you are not just hoping that you have access to medication in an emergency. Save more than $360 by getting these life-saving antibiotics with Jace Medical, plus an additional $20 off when you use our code LOCKEDON at checkout. Go check them out, jacemedical.com. That's Jase medical.com. Go check them out today. All right, continuing on here on Locked On SEC with our buddy Chris Marler. Marler, we got 5 games in the SEC that we need to hit on before we get out of here. So let's hit with BYU at Arkansas. We saw Arkansas go out to BYU last year, and they won pretty convincingly. Now BYU comes to Arkansas. A weird now SEC versus Big 12 matchup. That can't get my head around that one.
Yeah.
But Rocket Sanders not going to play again, still out in this one. And Arkansas did not look very good against Kent State last week, a team that they should have just rolled. Mm-hmm. What's going on with the Arkansas offense, and how do we like them against BYU?
I mean, I don't know. What is the line?
8. Arkansas -8.
Yeah, I would take BYU. I think that, like first off, here's the one thing that you see from BYU teams always, because they're Mormon, is they're a veteran team. For real. 2 things I know about BYU football: soaking and they're Mormons. So they like, I think they'll be fine. I think Arkansas will probably win the game because you have KJ Jefferson, who's Superman. It's a concern if Sanders isn't ready, but it also kind of tells me that, like, maybe the concern is like not as deep for the coaching staff if it's not a must-have for him to go, especially if they've announced this early. I think they'll be fine. I think they'll win the game. That's one of the more underrated atmospheres in the SEC and maybe all Power 5. So it's not going to be easy for BYU to go there. But I would say, and also I think too, Arkansas killed them last year. I'd take Arkansas.
By the way, KJ averaging just under 200 yards passing a game so far this year. Only 59 rushing yards, 1 rushing touchdown. We have not seen. You said he's Superman. We've not seen KJ be Superman just yet. But step up in competition, maybe he steps up his play. How about this one on the SEC Network at 11 a.m.? It is number 15 Kansas State at Mizzou. Mizzou, a 5-point home underdog. That's a big game for Mizzou as a non-conference early season game.
Yeah, low key, one of the better matchups you're going to see in any non-con game this season, especially in the SEC. And I mean, like, position battles. The Kansas State offensive line, which is maybe the top 2, one of the top 2 best in the entire Big 12, and one of the more underrated offensive lines in the entire country, going up against that Missouri front 7. I think Missouri had a big time struggle bus win last week against MTSU. I would expect them to, maybe they were just overlooking them because this is a very big game. I mean, this is the epitome of a swing game for Eli Drinkwitz, right? Like, they need this win, but I hate to say it, I think that Kansas State is probably a more talented team, and also knows how to win a little bit more than this Missouri team has shown they know how to do, especially under Eli Drinkwitz the last couple seasons.
Yeah, and the offense hasn't, like, Cody Schrader's been great with the run game, but Brady Cook's not looked, superb against South Dakota and Middle Tennessee. What do you think he's going to look like against Kansas State's defense?
Right.
So, I'm almost inclined to take Kansas State minus the points, but again, Missouri is at home, so maybe some weird things go in their favor. But Eli was under scrutiny this week. People asking who's really calling the plays. He said Kirby Moore's calling the plays. I have some input. And it felt like a Jimbo Bobby Petrino situation. Let's get into a couple more. The early one that, man, this one is weird. LSU at Mississippi State.
Ugh.
When that line first dropped, it was LSU -10. I think it's around LSU -9. That just seemed like a really high line for LSU because Mississippi State's 2-0. Nice home overtime win over Arizona a week ago, though they were 9-point favorites in that one. But Mississippi State has been old school, back to their roots of dominant run, dominant defense, and Will Rogers not having to do a whole lot in the passing game.
Yeah, it's almost like people expected LSU to be contending for a national championship, so they should be able to beat teams like Mississippi State by 10 points. So I would take LSU, and I think that might be an early favorite for lock of the week, besides the game I think you're going to tell me about next. I would take LSU because I think this is also a game that needs to be a statement game for Brian Kelly and that team. And listen, I don't know. I don't even know what the final score was against Grambling, but I know that when I looked up at the scoreboard,
70-something points.
Nice. But when I look at it at one point, it was 14-10. You're like, man, just come out and like put your foot on someone's throat for all 60 minutes. I think you're going to start to see, like we saw this last year, and LSU in this game where the identity of this team started to take place. And I think that's what happens in Starkville. It'll be a fun little road test for them, even though it won't be that difficult. 11 a.m. kick. I think they sputter probably early, but I think they win big.
Let me give you this. This is my favorite stat that I saw today in this game. In this game 2 years ago, LSU went to Starkville. They eked out a 28-25 win over Mississippi State. In that game, Woody Marks ran the ball 13 times. Will Rogers threw the ball 62 times.
Wow.
This past week, in their win over Arizona, Woody Marks rushed 24 times. Will Rogers threw 17 passes. So,
that's crazy.
What a flip of what they were 2 years ago to what Mississippi State is now. So, we'll see what they look like against Florida State or against LSU. Do you like Mississippi State plus the 9?
No, I like LSU to cover. Hammer it.
Okay. All right. We'll see.
10-2 last week in my picks, by the way.
I love it. I'm loving it.
Yeah.
All right. We got two more. We'll start with the blowout expected. South Carolina is at Georgia. Georgia 27.5-point home favorite. Georgia's just look uninspired through their first two games. And maybe it's because of the opponent. Maybe they played down, but Georgia's run game's not look very good. Like we're so used to them playing these inferior opponents and rushing for like 300, 400 yards. We haven't seen that yet. At South Carolina, like we talked about, the 9 sacks week 1 wasn't good with Spencer Rattler, but Rattler's letting it fly, throwing for 300 yards a game. Maybe if he gets some protection, I expect Georgia's going to have some sacks on him, right? But if they can maybe protect him a little bit, he can complete some balls, keep this one closer.
I don't think Georgia had a sack this weekend against Ball State. So, I mean, I would expect that to change. Here's the thing. This is like, every year, I feel like we look at this game and you're like, oh, man, this is South Carolina can pull the upset of the century. And they did in Sanford Stadium in 2019. It was crazy. 4-8 team beats a team that ends up playing for the SEC championship, all that good stuff. I don't know what Shane Beamer did to Kirby Smart. I don't know what he did. But Kirby hates him like every kid that ever listened to Taking Back Sunday hates their stepdad. Like he hates him. I mean, hates him. If my stepdad's listening, just know that I love you. I was just making a joke. TBS is a great band, though. Anyway, no, I think that South Carolina goes in there, and it is maybe it's close a little bit early. Maybe it's like some of those Kentucky games we saw in the past where it's like, oh, it's like it's close in the first quarter. But I think it turns into the opposite of those Kentucky games, and I think your UGA blows them out. He's dominant. Kirby has dominated South Carolina. He's dominated the East in general, but he has dominated South Carolina. You saw what he did to them a year ago on their home field when they had a little bit more juice, I think, in their back pocket for South Carolina. 27.5. I think this is another one that I would hammer. Like I just like stay away from them first quarter and first half because they have not gotten off to good starts. But my goodness, have they put it on people late?
Yeah, and I might take back my sack comment on Spencer Rattler. Georgia through 2 games has 1 sack on the season. It was Michael Williams against Tennessee Martin. You just played Tennessee Martin and Ball State. And you have 1 sack as a team. Like,
it's not good.
Hey, if I'm Spencer Rattler, I'm going, damn, North Carolina got me for 9. If Georgia gets me for none, we might pull off this upset. So, my opinion is too many points. Give me South Carolina plus the points. Keep it a little closer. And lastly, the game of the week. It is number 11 Tennessee at Florida. 2 weeks ago, Marler, I would have said, look, I got Tennessee hands down. But watching what Joe Milton and that offense looked like, they got it going against Virginia eventually. But Austin Peay was just a big wet fart. I don't know what was going on in that game. The offense was just, it was not good to watch, man. And Tennessee only a 6.5-point road favorite. And of course, the note, they have not won in Gainesville since 2003. The more and more this week goes along, Marler, I might be leaning upset. Florida didn't play great against Utah. They played awesome against McNeese last week. It was McNeese, but they got the ground game going finally. Montrell Johnson, Trevor Etienne, they look good. Graham Mertz, be that game manager. Don't mess up. Just play safe football. I don't know. If Joe Milton looks like Joe Milton like he did last week, I think this one's close.
I didn't get to see all of last week because I was at an actual football game. But I will say this. Joe Milton, I love what he's done so far. because we all want to see these massive stats come out. But there's one stat that he has put up that I love more than anything, and that's 0 interceptions. 4 touchdowns to the air, 7 total, 0 interceptions so far. He's made a couple bad mistakes, I think. But they've been able to run the football pretty well. I think their front seven is good. I think their front seven is going to give that offensive line fits for Florida. What is the line again?
6.5.
I would take Tennessee, and it is now the lock of the week. That is like, and here's the thing though. I fully want to believe and get behind Florida, and I think that line will drop down. So if you wait, I would take it now at 6.5. But if you're trying to bet on it, it'll probably drop down to 5, maybe 4.5, something like that. You could probably get it even at 4 at some books, maybe in the next couple of days. Because here's the thing: Tennessee has beaten Florida in the swamp 2 total times in the last 51 years. And I will say that again: Tennessee has beaten Florida in the swamp twice since 1972. Think about that.
Wow.
And if you're going to sit here and fact check this, by the way, and say, well, they didn't play every year before 92, it doesn't matter. That's embarrassing. It's embarrassing. I still say take Tennessee. I think this feeds into some of those games, the same stuff you see with like Ohio State, teams like Ole Miss under Lane Kiffin, and some of those teams where it's like you kind of have a bit of an asshole as a coach, and you're going to want to go in there and prove a point and flex some muscle against a rival. And I think this is a perfect spot for Tennessee and Josh Heupel. And I think that fan base, this is like Tennessee's, nothing would make Tennessee happier than destroying Florida. And I think that's probably closer to what will happen than a 6-point win.
2 things on this matchup. Both teams have played their first 2 games of the season without their starting centers. Both guys are expected to come back. Cooper Mays is supposed to come back for Tennessee. Good. Kingsley Eguakin's supposed to come back for Florida. Billy Napier made some interesting comments this week saying that he said Cooper Mays is the key to that offense, that he is the straw that stirs the drink with the tempo, with running 3 plays a minute. I found that interesting. When he said that, I went, oh, well, if Cooper Mays is back, maybe that will fix what we've seen kind of poorly out of Joe Milton. I laugh when you said he hasn't thrown an interception yet. My Tennessee friend might say, well, you got to throw a catchable ball to be picked off because, throwing it over people's heads. But, no, look, that might be the key to this one. Both teams getting their centers back, and maybe Florida's run game plays much better with having the starting center in there.
I'd agree with that.
So you're leaning Tennessee?
I'm all over Tennessee.
All right. I'm leaning Florida in the points, but it's early. I may change as the week goes along. He is Chris Marler from the Saturday Football Uncensored podcast. Remind everybody where they can follow you.
Yeah, man, I appreciate it. It's always a fun time coming on here. Saturday Football Uncensored podcast. We have new episodes out every Monday and then on Thursday as well. We have a live show every Sunday night that is live immediately, and then the podcast comes up Monday morning, and then every Thursday morning as well. So follow Saturday Football Uncensored on obviously all platforms for streaming, and then Twitter, and then Vern Funquist on Twitter and Instagram. You
got anything else you want to throw in there before
I hate you so much?
Hang on, wait. I think I had one. Alabama's loss snapped their 21 straight home games. That was an active streak in the FBS. They had won 73 straight home games when leading entering the 4th quarter. Nick Saban had gone 121 straight home games without a double-digit loss. You got to go back to his LSU days in 2003. So
you want to hear another stat? You want to hear another stat going back to his LSU days in 2003? He's lost a total of 7 games as a top 6 ranked team before mid-October since 2003. Okay. So in the first half of the season, he's only lost 7 games right there, right? His record after that, 53-7. 53 of those games are against Power 5 opponents. And Alabama, it's happened in the last 3 times it's happened is 2015, 2021, 2022. He's 25-2 after that. So just remember, when LSU comes to town and tries to beat them for the 2nd time in 11 years, it should be a really fun game.
2nd time in 11. Oh, in Tuscaloosa, you mean?
No. In 11 years.
No. Beat him in
2 times in 11 years. They
beat him last year. Dude, Saban lost to Ron Zook, all right? Come on. You lose to Ron.
Listen. You know what? Bama lost, but you know what my favorite part about Bama losing was? They didn't lose by 24 and get their backs blown out by Florida State on national television, and they also didn't congratulate the offensive line or the defensive line mid-game to tell them how good of a job they did.
First off, that guy's going to not play much anymore. They're going to play the freshman. Lance Hurd is probably going to play right tackle now. Miles Frazier is going to be pulled from right guard. Also, I'm looking around. I cannot find. I was told there's Joyless Murder Ball around here. I can't find it.
That's so good. This needs to be a segment on the end of the show. Is just us talking blank to each other. I love it.
All good, Marler. Good to talk with you, man, and we'll do it again next week.
Sounds good, brother. Talk to you then.
All right, this has been Locked On SEC. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow.